When my glamorous daughter-in-law finally snapped and called me a useless old woman in front of both families, she had no idea that the company she worshipped her father for building had been quietly bankrolled in my name. By the time her father-in-law checked the paperwork and discovered I was the true investor, I'd already decided exactly how they were going to learn the price of disrespect. We were all squeezed around Marcus and Tanya's big farmhouse table, the one she liked to post on Instagram. White plates, takeout boxes from that expensive Asian fusion place she loved, half-empty wine glasses. Maya's cartoons floated in from the next room, bright voices, canned laughter, the clink of her Lego box every now and then. The smell of sesame oil and ginger hung in the air, but everything else felt cold. They called it a family meeting, like I was an employee being called into HR. I sat at the far side, near the patio door, my cardigan pulled tight around my shoulders. Marcus was at the head, shoulders hunched, still in his work shirt. Tanya sat to his right, phone upside down beside her plate like it was some noble sacrifice. Gerald, her father-in-law, was at the other end, big man, gold watch flashing every time he lifted his fork. Everyone kept pretending this was just dinner, but the air was thick with something else. They were talking about numbers, tuition, bonuses, investments, the grown-up words people use when they're really talking about power. Maya ran in twice to ask if she could have more fries, and both times Tanya shooed her away with a tight smile. "We can't keep paying what we're paying for that preschool," Marcus was saying, pushing noodles around his plate. "Not if I'm taking a pay cut during the transition." Tanya snorted softly. "It's not a pay cut, it's a strategic restructuring. And Maya is staying where she is. The networking alone is worth it." I took a sip of my water. The glass felt too thin in my hand. "There's a church preschool near my old house. Pastor Lewis's wife runs it. Good people, small class sizes, and it's half the cost. I could walk her there in the mornings. If..." The sound of Tanya's fork dropping against her plate cracked through the room like a gunshot. "Okay, no," she said, sitting up straighter. Her earrings swung when she turned to me. "You don't understand how any of this works, Evelyn. You don't work. You don't earn. You're not part of the financial planning here." My ears started to ring. I folded my napkin in my lap so she couldn't see my hands tremble. "You were just what?" she snapped, voice rising. "Just throwing out random cheap ideas like we're still living in your little neighborhood? This is our life, our money, our tile. You're just a useless old woman we're stuck with." The words landed heavy and wet, like someone had dumped a bowl of dirty dishwater over my head. For a moment, the whole room tilted. The hum of the TV faded. The clink of Gerald's fork stopped. Marcus stared down at his plate as if he could crawl inside it. Gerald leaned back in his chair, watching me with a little half smile, like he was curious to see what the bug would do when poked. I felt the heat rise up my neck, hot and prickly. 68 years of doing for other people, and my body still betrayed me like a shy teenager's. My cheeks burned, my chest hurt, but my voice when it came out was soft. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to overstep. I was just thinking of a cheaper option." Tanya blew out a breath through her nose. "Cheaper isn't always better. That's what you people never get." She reached over and squeezed Gerald's arm. "My dad is the real investor in this family. Once he finalizes this next round of funding, we'll have options. Right, Dad?" "That's right. We've got big things in motion, Evie. You let the young folks handle it." I looked at him. Really looked at him, letting my eyes climb from his immaculate shirt to that old watch on his wrist. For a split second, the scene blurred, and I saw another table, smaller, laminate top, sugar packets in a chipped ceramic bowl, his hands shaking around a diner mug while he asked my husband for help. Blue ink, his name and mine on a line I'd sign on a Sunday after church. "Once the deal is done," Tanya went on, plucking a chicken piece with her chopsticks, "we can finally sort out your living situation too. There's a really nice facility in Maple Ridge. Private rooms, activities, everything. You love it. Wouldn't that be nice? No more stairs to struggle with."
Maya wandered in again, rubbing her eyes. Grandma, can I... Come here, baby. Tanya grabbing her around the waist and settling her on her lap. Say thank you to Grandpa. He's the reason we have this house. She tilted her child's face toward Gerald. Say thank you, Grandpa, for investing in our future. Maya looked confused, then obediently mumbled, Thank you, Grandpa. Gerald chuckled. That's my girl. I watched them a moment, my fingers smoothing the edge of my napkin until the fabric went shiny. Then I lifted my eyes and held Gerald's gaze. Just a heartbeat longer than polite, long enough for him to feel it. He shifted just a little and looked away.
In my mind, that old contract glowed like a nightlight in a dark room. They thought I was nothing but extra weight at their table. They had no idea whose signature their chairs and their roof and Gerald's precious deals were still standing on. I didn't tell that part right away, of course. That came later. The next morning, I woke up before the sun, like I always did. Old nurse habits die hard. My little basement room was dim and cool, the only light coming from the orange strip of the nightlight near the bathroom door. Upstairs, the house was still. No heels clacking on hardwood yet, no espresso machine hissing. I slid my feet into my slippers and sat there for a moment, letting the quiet sit with me. The smell down there was a mix of laundry detergent and the faint must of old carpet. Tanya had called it cozy when they moved me in. It felt more like a storage unit with a bed. On the small dresser, my kettle sat next to a jar of instant coffee and 2 chipped mugs I'd insisted on bringing with me when I sold my house. I filled the kettle from the bathroom sink and set it on the hot plate, listening for the little click and soft hum. When the water started to warm, I could almost pretend I was back in my own kitchen, back when the kitchen was mine. I grew up in a house where mornings meant biscuits from a can and my mother humming old hymns under her breath while she fried eggs. It was a little rental in Georgia, paper-thin walls and a porch swing that squeaked. We didn't have much, but we had routine. We had respect. Children didn't talk over their elders, and elders, for their part, tried not to be a burden. I carried those rules like stones in my pockets all my life. I became a nurse because somebody had to make steady money. I learned to move quickly in other people's emergencies, but slowly in my own. I married Leonard when I was 23. He was a mechanic with grease under his nails and big, impossible dreams. For years, we worked opposite shifts, me in scrubs, him under hoods, saving every penny in a mayonnaise jar with "Someday" scratched onto the label. Someday turned into a small cafe on the corner of Willow and Knife. Nothing fancy, 6 booths, 4 stools at the counter, a griddle that never quite cooled down, and a bell over the door that jingled whenever someone walked in. We served coffee strong enough to sober a man up, and pies that made construction workers close their eyes on the first bite. I can still smell it if I try. The mix of coffee, bacon, bleach, and the sweet tang of lemon bars cooling on a rack. I can still hear the sizzle, the murmur of regulars, and Leonard's laugh booming from the back when a joke hit just right. That cafe was our pride, our proof that 2 black kids from nowhere could build something of their own. When Leonard's heart failed on a Tuesday afternoon, it sounded to me like someone dropping a tray of dishes in an empty room. Sudden, violent, loud, then nothing. He died at 54. One minute he was arguing with the supplier about late deliveries. The next he was gone on a tiled floor that still had flour on it from the morning biscuits. I did CPR, even though I knew from the color of his lips, from the way his eyes stared past me, that I was mostly doing it for myself. Our savings, the cafe proceeds, the little house we'd finally bought, all of it became mine overnight. Not a fortune, but more than we'd ever had as kids. Enough to make Marcus's dream of college less of a fantasy. My boy was always the brainy one. He used to sit at the end booth doing his homework, plugging his ears against the noise. He wanted ties and briefcases, not wrenches and aprons. So I sold the cafe eventually.
downsized into a smaller house, and pushed him toward the world he wanted: business school, city internships, a job in an office high enough that your ears popped in the elevator. I told myself that was what a good mother did. You hand your children the tools you never had and hope they build something better. The first time I met Tanya, they came over to my house for Sunday dinner. Marcus stood there in my doorway in a too-tight shirt, smiling like he was 5 again. Tanya hovered behind him, perfect curls, sharp eyeliner, a dress that probably cost as much as my monthly grocery bill. "Mom, this is Tanya. My girlfriend, she's a project manager at Senior project manager," she corrected with a little laugh, extending her hand. "Hi, Mrs. Carter. I've heard so much about your cafe. It sounds cute." Her hand was soft, no calluses. Her nails were done in a pale pink French tip. She smelled like expensive perfume, flowers and something metallic underneath. At my kitchen table, she smiled and complimented my fried chicken, but she wrinkled her nose at the old crock pot on the counter. "I'll have to show you how to do those sheet pan dinners, so much easier and healthier. The oil," she fluttered her fingers. When I mispronounced the name of her company, added an extra syllable, she laughed. Not cruel, just amused. "It's okay," she said. "My mom does that too. Facebook moms, you know. Technology's just not your generation."
The comment stung more than it should have. I swallowed it with my sweet tea. It was small things at first. After they married and insisted I move in, for my safety, after a fall on my porch steps, she said all the right things. "We want you close, Mom. Family should take care of each other." But the minute my boxes came through their door, her hands were in them. "This pan is rusted," she said, holding up my old cast iron skillet like it was contaminated. "We're getting rid of this." "I've cooked in that skillet for 30 years, I said. "It's supposed to look like that." She dropped it in the donate pile anyway. "We have nonstick now. It's just better." She reorganized my clothes into bins and labeled them like I couldn't read. She spritzed the downstairs with some lemony spray and said, "That's better. It smelled like hospital before. You know, old people." She told Marcus I shouldn't drive anymore without talking to me first. I walked into the kitchen one afternoon to find them whispering by the sink. "It's not safe," she was saying. "What if she hits someone and we get sued?" "I'm right here," I said. They both jumped. Marcus forced a smile. "Mom, Tanya just meant..." "It's okay," I lied. "Maybe I'll drive less." So I stopped. I let my keys sit in a bowl by the door, and each time I glanced at them, it felt like another little piece of myself had been tucked away for my safety. Their neighborhood was nice. I'll give them that. Wide streets lined with young trees, mailboxes all in a row. The kind of place where a homeowners association sends you letters if your grass grows half an inch too long. Beige houses, beige cars, beige lives. The distant hum of the freeway was like a sleeping animal just over the hill. I walked with Maya to the little park some mornings, her small hand warm in mine. Kids in brand name sneakers ran around like they never once wondered how much their shoes cost. When Maya laughed, it bounced off the plastic slides and metal poles, bright enough to make the whole world seem softer. It was on one of those soft mornings that I heard the first real crack. I stood in the laundry room, folding her tiny socks, unicorns, rainbows, little hearts, when I heard Tanya's voice carry down the stairs. She was on speakerphone, pacing the kitchen above me, heels clicking. "No, seriously, once Dad finalizes this investment, we're putting the old lady in a home. I can't keep doing this. It's like having a third child who doesn't sleep." I froze, a sock in each hand. A muffled laugh from the phone. Tanya went on. Yeah, I know, honor your elders and all that. But she just sits there. She doesn't understand our life, our money, nothing. She's dead weight. And those creepy nurse stories, I swear, Maya's going to have a nervous breakdown before middle school." My fingers dug into the cotton. For a second, I pictured walking up those stairs and telling her exactly what I thought. Instead,
I smoothed the socks, matched them heel to heel. She laughed again. Dad says as soon as the new round closes, we'll have enough liquidity to get her a really good facility. Private. She should be grateful. Most people like her end up in state homes. Most people like her. Like me. I stared at the laundry basket until the shapes blurred. Then I took a breath, folded the last pair, and set the basket down gently. Old habits. Don't make trouble. Don't raise your voice. Be grateful for what you're given. But that night, when I lay in my little bed and the HVAC system rattled to life in the ceiling, another memory pushed through all the noise. Gerald's face, flushed from too much coffee, across my cafe table, his hands shaking as he held out documents, his voice low. I just need a little help to get the bank on board, Evie. They want someone with steady income, someone respectable. Just a cosign, really, temporary. Back then, it seemed harmless. I was a nurse. We had the cafe. My credit was good. Leonard, ever generous, had squeezed my hand and said, "We help friends. That's what we do." We signed papers in blue ink that day. A Sunday afternoon, sunlight slanting through the cafe windows, catching the dust in the air. I remembered the way my name looked in cursive right next to his. I thought I was just helping a friend of my husband chase his dream. I had no idea those signatures would be the only thing standing between me and the smiling "Where Seniors Thrive" brochure Tanya waved at me over dinner years later. And I had no idea yet that the man my granddaughter had just thanked for investing in our future was still standing on money and risk he borrowed from me in a time when we had far less than he does now. Life went on like that, slow and grinding, the way a stone wears down under dripping water. On the outside, nothing looked urgent. On the inside, something was getting ready to crack. It cracked in a restaurant where I couldn't pronounce half the things on the menu. Gerald picked the place. Of course he did. It had one of those names where they take two normal words, smash them together, and charge extra for the confusion. There were floor-to-ceiling windows looking over the city, white tablecloths, little glass vases with single stems on every table. The kind of place where they don't print prices next to everything, just a stray number here and there to remind you it's expensive.
"We're celebrating tonight," Gerald had said when they told me about it. "Big development deal, new money coming in, and Marcus is gonna be part of it. Family legacy." Tanya was excited. For days, she laid out her dress on the bed like it was a wedding. She sent her nails out for special treatment. Even Maya had a new little dress with a ribbon that wouldn't stay tied. They put me in the blue church dress I always wore for funerals and graduations, and Tanya loaned me a shawl that scratched my neck. "You look nice, Mom," Marcus said in the hallway before we left. He meant it. I could tell. He adjusted my shawl and gave my shoulder a squeeze. Tanya leaned over my shoulder with her lipstick in hand. "Just try not to spill anything on the tablecloths," she laughed. "They'll probably charge us extra." She said it like a joke, but my stomach tightened anyway. We walked in together, but it didn't feel like together. Tanya glided forward like she owned the room. Marcus trailed behind her, checking his phone. Gerald was already at the table when we arrived, shaking hands with a man in a suit. They laughed too loud. The air smelled like butter and wine and something charred. "Evie!" Gerald boomed when he saw me, standing up halfway. "You clean up nice." I smiled. "Thank you for inviting me." "Oh, you waved it off. Well, your family. This is a big night." The waiter pulled out chairs for Tanya and me. The menus were leather, heavy in my hands. The print was small. I had my reading glasses, but before I could slide them on, Tanya reached across and plucked the menu right out of my fingers. "Oh, Mom, you don't need to worry about prices," she said, bright and loud. "We'll order something light for you. You've been having trouble with heavy foods, remember?" I hadn't been having trouble with heavy foods. I had eaten leftover mac and cheese and a biscuit just fine the night before. But there it was again, that tone, like I was 3 steps away from pureed meals and bibs. "I can read a menu," I said softly. My cheeks felt warm. I know," she said, flipping pages without looking at me. "But these places are tricky. Portions are huge, and you know how your stomach gets." Marcus stared down his own menu. He didn't say a word.
The waiter stood there, eyes politely blank, while the grown woman who came out of my body treated me like a toddler. "I'll just have soup, then," I murmured, folding my hands in my lap where she couldn't see them tightening. Tanya smiled briskly at the waiter. "She'll have the seasonal soup, no bread on the side, and water with lemon." The waiter wrote it down with the same expression he had for everything else. I wanted to disappear into the chair. Gerald ordered steak. Marcus ordered whatever Gerald recommended. Tanya ordered fish with a name I couldn't pronounce. Maya, bless her, asked if they had chicken nuggets, and when the waiter said no, she burst into tears. Tanya hissed her back into silence, promising dessert later if she behaved. We got through the first round of small talk. Weather, school, work. I listened to their words like I was listening through a vent grate. There, but not for me. Then Gerald picked up his wine glass and tapped it gently with his ring. "I want to take a moment," he said, his voice taking on that rehearsed weight, "to talk about family legacy." Oh, here we go, I thought. He launched into his story, how he started with nothing, how he scraped together enough money to buy his first rundown property, how everyone told him he'd fail, how he worked late nights, out-hustled everyone, built his empire brick by brick. His hands moved through the air, painting pictures of old warehouses and empty lots like he was the only one who had ever worked hard in his life. He never once said my name. He never once said Leonard's. I sat there with my soup spoon halfway to my mouth, steam curling around my wrist. I saw the cafe again, saw his face asking us for help, saw my hand shaking as I signed those first papers because I was scared, but wanted to believe in his dream. Now he stood there in a $100 shirt and gold cufflinks, telling my son how proud he was to finally bring him into the fold. "As you know," he said, putting a big hand on Marcus's shoulder, "I'm investing heavily in the next phase of Reynolds development, new subdivision, new commercial strip, and this time Marcus will come in as a partner, vice president. It's time for him to step up as the next generation." The table clapped. Tanya dabbed at her eyes like he'd given a wedding speech. Marcus smiled, nervous and flattered. "And with this new phase," Tanya added, seizing the stage, "we're going to have to reallocate some space at home, too." She laughed, tipping her wineglass toward me. "Maybe turn Mom's room into a proper home office or gym, since Mom's barely mobile anymore." Nearby tables turned their heads. Her words hung there, ugly and bright. I blinked. "I walk just fine," I said, a little sharper than I meant.
Tanya leaned in, loud enough that the couple behind her definitely heard. "You can't even manage the stairs half the time, Mom. Be honest. We can't build a future around that. You're just—" She made a helpless gesture with her hands. "You're just a useless old woman, Mom. We can't build a future around you." My heart thudded. Hard. I felt like I'd left my body. I watched myself from somewhere near the ceiling, saw my own hand, aged and spotted, holding a spoon as steady as I could keep it so they wouldn't see how much it shook. I saw my reflection in the window, a woman with lines around her mouth, tired eyes, shoulders slightly rounded from years of leaning over beds and tables. That woman had cleaned strangers' vomit when their families couldn't stand the smell. She'd held hands as machines were turned off. She'd worked double shifts so her husband could sleep an extra hour. She'd helped build a cafe where lonely people came to feel seen. And here she was, being told she was in the way. "Tanya, that's enough," Marcus muttered. He didn't look up from his plate. Gerald chuckled, taking a long sip of wine. "She's just being honest, Evie. We all get old. Best thing you can do is not get in the way of the next generation. That's how progress works." Something inside me wanted to scream. Another part of me washed everything in a strange calm. My nurse brain kicked in. Steady the patient, steady yourself. Keep breathing. 1, 2, 3. I set my spoon down. My voice, when it came, was almost gentle. "I didn't realize I was in the way," I said. "I thought I was helping, watching Maya, cooking sometimes, paying my share of—" "That's the thing,"
Tanya cut in. She reached down beside her chair and lifted a manila envelope I hadn't noticed before. My heart squeezed just seeing it. The flap was tucked in, the edge slightly bent. There was a faint coffee ring on one corner, like someone had set a mug on it earlier that day. My hands felt cold. "Go on, Mom," Tanya urged. "You can just sign it tonight and we'll take care of the rest. It'll make everything easier for everyone." Gerald nodded. "She's right. I did the same thing with my mother. Best decision we made. Took the pressure off." The room felt suddenly too bright, like someone had turned the dimmers up to high. The clink of silverware around us seemed louder. I could hear a baby crying at the end of the room, the soft spray of water as a busboy refilled a glass at the next table. My fingers reached for the envelope before my brain caught up. The paper was smooth and warm where her hand had just been. I slid my thumb under the flap and pulled out the contents. Legal font, dense paragraphs, words I recognized from years of signing discharge papers and consent forms. Durable power of attorney, transfer, authority, assets. My eye caught one phrase halfway down the page. Full control of all financial accounts and property currently and hereafter held in the name of Evelyn Carter. My heart pounded so hard my vision blurred for a second. They weren't just asking to help with my bills. They were asking me to hand them my life, my house, what was left of my savings, every little thing Leonard and I had scraped together over decades, while they sat there telling me I was useless. I swallowed. My throat felt dry, like I'd swallowed chalk. "I'd like to read this properly," I said finally. "At home, where I can put my glasses on." Tanya smiled tightened. "Mom, there's no need to drag this out. We had Dad's lawyer look at it. It's standard. You trust Dad's lawyer, right? He handles all our contracts." Something in me, the part that had watched patients ask one more time what they were signing before major surgery, spoke up. "That lawyer works for Gerald, not for me." She sighed, loud. The couple behind us went quiet again. "This is why we can't get anything done," she said to Marcus, throwing her hands up. "She clings to everything like a raccoon clutching trash. It's not about you, Mom. We're trying to protect you from yourself." My fingers folded the paper slowly, carefully, like it was fragile and might shatter. I slid it back into the envelope and tucked the flap down. "I'll get someone to look at it," I said. Gerald's head snapped up. His easy smile dropped a fraction. "What do you mean, someone?" he asked, his voice a little sharper than before. I met his eyes. For the first time that evening, I let him see a slice of what I was feeling. Not all of it, just enough. "Oh," I said, soft as ever. "Just an old friend who knows her way around contracts." A muscle twitched in his jaw. It was there and gone in a second, but I saw it. I slipped the envelope into my purse, feeling its weight settle there next to my worn wallet and a peppermint I kept for Maya.
I sat there, hands in my lap, my heart finally slowing down. Every now and then, I pressed my fingers lightly against my purse, feeling the edge of the envelope inside. They thought they were putting me in a corner. They didn't know I just picked up the first piece of my way out. After that dinner, something changed between us. Not out loud, not right away, but the air in the house felt different. Back home, the kitchen lights were too bright, making the stainless steel glare. Tanya kicked her heels off by the door and immediately started complaining about the restaurant. "They overcooked the fish. I'm sending an email," she muttered, already on her phone. Marcus loosened his tie and disappeared into his office. I went downstairs, with my purse held tight against my side. In my little room, I closed the door softly and finally pulled out the envelope. The paper looked the same as it had at the restaurant, but in the quiet, I could hear my own breathing while I read. I didn't understand every word, but I understood enough. Once I signed that paper, they would be able to do anything in my name. Open accounts, close them, sell property, take loans, all under the banner of helping me. I sat on the edge of my bed and let the fear flood me. My fingers tingled, my chest felt tight.
For a moment, I saw myself in one of those facilities Tanya kept sending me links to. Small room, shared bathroom, TV bolted to the wall, strangers coming in and out with plastic smiles. I saw my house sign taken down. I saw Leonard's tools sold at a yard sale for $5 a box. Then, the fear settled into something heavier, something solid. I folded the documents again, slower this time, and walked over to my old suitcase in the corner. At the very bottom, under my church hats and the quilt my mother made, there was a rusty metal box with a keyhole. The box was dented in one corner from a move years ago. Leonard had called it our little safe. We used to keep cash in there, tucked inside an envelope labeled emergencies. After he died, I tucked more than cash in it. I pulled it out, feeling the weight stretch my arm. The key was on a string taped under the bottom drawer of my dresser. Tanya had rearranged my things, but she hadn't found that. I'd made sure. The lock clicked open with a sound that sent a shiver up my spine. Inside were yellowed papers, old bank statements, the deed to my house, Leonard's birth certificate, and the faded copy of our marriage license. A photo of the cafe the day we opened, ribbon half cut in Leonard's hands. And near the bottom, folded in thirds and still smelling faintly of coffee, was the contract with Gerald's company letterhead. I sat down at my little desk, the cheap one Marcus had built from a flat pack, and smoothed that contract out under the desk lamp. The logo at the top looked younger, simpler, but it was the same company name he now bragged about at fancy restaurants. The date was almost 30 decades ago. Underneath, in black and white, were details I'd never fully understood when we signed. Loan agreement, equity, collateral, use of borrower's income to secure bank financing, temporary allocation of ownership shares. My finger trembled as I traced the lines. My name, Leonard's name, Gerald's, percentages beside them that made my breath catch. I realized then that it wasn't just a favor we'd done. We had been the foundation, the credit, the risk, the initial engine. And if those percentages had never been formally changed, then on paper, I still was. I didn't know exactly what that meant yet, but I knew this. If they wanted me to hand them my future, I needed someone on my side who could read these papers better than I could. So, the next morning, while Tanya was at work and Marcus was taking Maya to school, I made a phone call. "Leela?" I said when she answered. "It's Evie from New Hope Baptist. You still doing that law work of yours?" She laughed. "Last time I checked, yes, ma'am. How are you?" I hesitated, looking at the open box on my bed, papers spilling out like old secrets. "I think I might need your help with some contracts." Things in the house didn't improve while I waited for my appointment with Leela. They got worse. Tanya's patience, what little she had had, seemed to evaporate after that restaurant night. It was as if, because I hadn't signed those papers on the spot, she decided I'd chosen sides. And it wasn't hers. "You left the bathroom light on again," she said one afternoon, standing at the top of the basement stairs with her arms crossed. Her voice carried down like an echo from a well. "Do you know how much our electric bill is? We can't just light up the whole house for no reason." I looked up from the basket of laundry I was folding. "I turned it off when I left," I said. "I was sure I had. I always checked." "Well, it was on when I went in. You have to be more careful. You don't see the bills, but I do." The next day, there was a piece of paper taped to the fridge, a handwritten chore schedule with names in neat columns. Tanya had given herself meal planning and finances. Marcus had yard work and trash. Under my name, she had written things like wipe down counters and wipe microwave after use with smiley faces, like it was cute.
"I thought this would help us stay organized," she said when she caught me reading it. "Since you're home most of the day, you can take care of the little things. It's only fair, right? Fair. That word again.
fair. I started to notice how often she used it when she was about to be unfair. She began leaving me alone with Maya more and more, but it was never framed as a favor to me. It was framed as me being an obstacle. "I have a networking event," she'd say, sliding her arms into a blazer. The scent of her perfume filled the hallway. "Again," she'd add, like she knew I'd think it was too frequent. "Just keep Maya off the iPad, okay? And no juice boxes after 6. She's not a puppy. You can't just feed her snacks all day." "I know how to take care of a child," I said once. "I raised Marcus." She smiled in that tight way. "Yes, and look how confused he is about boundaries." She kissed Maya on the top of the head, grabbed her purse, and left. Then later, if she came home and saw crumbs on the table or a cartoon still on, she would sigh loudly, open and close cabinets, and mutter under her breath about having 3 kids instead of 1. One afternoon, I went looking in my purse for a $20 bill I was sure I'd tucked into my wallet. I wanted to buy a little coloring book for Maya at the drugstore. I opened the wallet. It was gone. I emptied the whole bag on my bed. Tissues, lip balm, peppermint, old receipts. No cash. My chest tightened. Maybe I had used it and forgotten. Maybe not. A few days later, I went to my dresser drawer, to the old Bible where I used to tuck envelopes of emergency cash, back in my house. I'd transported that habit when I moved in. Old habits are like that. You tuck them into new drawers. The envelope was still there, but lighter. I opened it. The folded bills inside were fewer than I remembered. I counted them twice, then sat down in my desk chair. A slow heat worked its way up my chest. I hadn't told anyone about that envelope, but the week before, Tanya had helped reorganize my drawers. "Let's be clutter," she'd said. "Less is more, Mom. You'll thank me." Now I stared at the thin envelope in my hand. Maybe I'd spent some without remembering. Maybe I was imagining things. Or maybe someone who had been complaining loudly about money had gone on a quiet little search for it. I put the envelope back. This time I counted out exactly what was there and wrote it down in the back of an old notebook. Whatever else was being taken from me, I could at least hold on to the truth of what I saw. That night at dinner, Tanya pulled out her phone and turned the screen toward me. "Look at this place," she said. The photo showed a sunlit building with big windows and seniors sitting on a lawn in bright folding chairs. "It's called Silver Willow. My friend's mom is there. They have art classes and live music and a salon on site. Where seniors thrive." She recited the tagline like she'd memorized it. She swiped through pictures, smiling old women in soft sweaters playing cards, men in pastel shirts painting landscapes, a dining hall that looked like a hotel brunch. "At least there you wouldn't be in the way," she said, smile tight. "And you'd have people your own age to talk to. It might actually be nicer for you." Marcus shoveled mashed potatoes into his mouth, like if he chewed hard enough he wouldn't have to speak. "I'm not in the way," I said quietly. She rolled her eyes. "You really don't see it, do you? The extra errands, the extra bills, the stress. Mom, it might be easier on everyone if we looked into more support for you." "More support?" Marcus echoed that later. We were alone in the kitchen that time, Tanya out with friends, Maya already in bed. He stood by the sink, arms folded. "Maybe we should look into it," he said. "Just to have information. Some of those places are nice now." I wiped the counter slowly. "You mean those places your wife keeps sending me pictures of? The ones that cost more per month than my old house note?" He winced. "It's not about money." "It's always about money," I said. "You two talk about it more than you talk about anything else." He took a breath like he was about to argue, then let it out. "Mom, I'm under a lot of pressure. Dad wants me fully in the company. Tanya wants another kid. The mortgage is high. The car payments. We're juggling a lot. Having you here, it's just what?" I asked. He couldn't say it. He stared down at the sink. "It's just a lot, okay?" he murmured. "Tanya says we're doing you a favor taking you in. We just need something to give." I watched my son, The boy who used to crawl onto my lap with scraped knees, now unable to look his mother in the eye while he told her she was a weight around his neck. I should have yelled. I should have said, "Who helped you pay for college? Who sold her cafe so you could live in that nice house?" Instead, I just wiped the counter. Old habits.
From the hallway, I heard Gerald's voice drift in one night a week or two later. Tanya was out. Maya was sleeping. I'd gone upstairs to get a glass of water and paused when I heard men's voices in the living room. "You need to be a man about this," Gerald was saying, ice clinking in his glass. "She's going to ruin everything if you let her cling to control. Old people make bad financial decisions. That's just a fact. You have to take over before she sinks you." Marcus's voice was low. "She's my mother, Dad. And I'm your father," Gerald shot back. "And I'm telling you this as someone who built something from nothing. Sentimentality is a luxury for people without responsibilities. You want to be taken seriously in this company? You show you can make hard calls. Take control of her assets. Put her somewhere safe. Protect the brand we're building here. Protect the brand." That was me, right there, boiled down to a risk factor on a spreadsheet. I shifted my weight, and the floorboard under me creaked. The voices paused. "Someone there?" Gerald called. I stepped into the doorway. "Just getting water," I said. I held my glass up as proof. Gerald's smile snapped into place. "Evie!" he boomed. "Didn't see you. We were just talking shop. You know how it is." I know how men talk when they think the women aren't listening. "Good night, Marcus." My son's cheeks flushed. "Good night, Mom," he muttered. In my room, with the door closed, I pulled out the contract again. The company letterhead glowed under my little lamp. The more they pushed, the clearer my memory became. I picked up the phone and called Lila back. "Can you see me sooner?" I asked. "It's getting urgent." Lila's office was in a converted old house that had been painted bright teal to make it look friendlier. The waiting room smelled like coffee and printer ink. A fake fern sat in the corner. There were children's books on a low shelf and legal brochures on a tall one. I felt strange walking in there. I'd spent most of my life on the other side of that equation, me in scrubs, other people in waiting rooms. Now I was the one sitting with my purse in my lap, squeezing the handle while the clock ticked. When she opened the door and called my name, she looked just like she had in church, only instead of a choir robe, she wore a navy blazer over a simple dress. Her hair was pulled back, and her glasses were perched low on her nose. "Evie," she said, smiling wide. "Come on back, sugar." Her office was small and slightly cluttered. Stacks of files on the floor, a framed degree on the wall, a cross-stitch that said "Justice, Mercy, Humility" in faded thread. I sat down in the chair across from her desk and placed the envelope and the old contract between us like an offering. "I don't know if this is anything, but I need to understand what I'm signing and what I already signed." She picked up the manila envelope first, sliding the power of attorney papers out. Her eyes moved quickly, the way mine used to sweep a chart. Every now and then her mouth tightened. "This was drawn up by his lawyer?" she asked. "Gerald's. He does all their contracts." She nodded. "Mm-hmm." She kept reading. "This isn't just about paying your water bill, Evie. This gives them broad power, real broad, to sell property, open and close accounts, sign on your behalf. You'd still legally own things, but in practice," she met my eyes, "they'd be in control." My stomach dropped, even though I already knew. She set that aside and picked up the older contract. The paper crackled softly as she unfolded it. For a while, the only sound in the room was the rustle of that page and the faint hum of the old AC unit. Her eyes stopped on one paragraph. Then she went back and read it again. She grabbed a pen and underlined a line. "Evie," she said slowly, "do you know what this says? I know we co-signed something to help him get his loan.
He needed our cafe as collateral, our income. The bank liked my nurse salary, that's what he told us, and that once he got established, he'd buy us out. She leaned back in her chair. That's part of it, but there's more. Look here. She turned the contract so it faced me and tapped a section with her pen. This doesn't just list you as co-signer on the loan. It lists you as the initial equity holder. That means, on paper, when this company was formed, the shares were issued in your name. Gerald's credit was bad. The bank didn't trust him, so he needed someone they did trust to technically hold the company for a while. That someone was you. I squinted at the numbers. The percentages she circled looked unreal. But that was temporary, I said. He said it was just until he got on his feet. We always thought he changed it later. Did you ever sign papers changing it? She asked Jenton. I searched my memory. We had signed a lot of things in those years. Health forms, insurance, little business licenses. I remember one other sit down with Gerald and a bank officer, but it had been more about refinancing, about lowering his interest. I don't think so. Not like this. Not a big change. Did you ever receive shareholder notices, annual reports, votes, anything?
No, I said. We got some interest payments for a while. Then when Leonard died, Gerald came by and said he'd keep taking care of us informally. That paperwork wasn't necessary between friends. She sighed. Evie, on paper, unless this was formally amended and filed, you still own the original company entity, the one all his other branches grew out of. These clauses here, they're dangerous for him right now. She pointed to another section. This says if he fails to make certain payments or fails to keep you updated as a shareholder, you have the right to call in the debt, demand an accounting, even force a sale or freeze of assets while the dispute is resolved. It's like a safety valve the original lawyer built in for you. My heart hammered. Freeze assets? I repeated. Like stop his accounts? In certain circumstances with court involvement, yeah, she said. At minimum, you could make his life very complicated. At maximum, well, let's just say he should have treated his original investor a lot better. I leaned back, mind spinning. I had walked into that office thinking maybe I had a foot to stand on. I was walking out realizing I had the floor. My first feeling wasn't triumph. It was fear. If I push this, I said slowly, could it hurt Marcus? His job, Tanya? I don't want my granddaughter living in a box because I got mad. Anger isn't a legal strategy, Leela said. This is about rights and leverage and protecting yourself. Gerald is the one who's been out of compliance for years. He should have cleaned this up a long time ago. He didn't. That's on him. I rubbed my thumb over the edge of the contract. In my mind, I saw Leonard at our cafe table, smiling that big, hopeful smile. We're making a wise move, Evie, he said, tapping the paper. Gerald's hungry. That's good in business. He'll do right by us. He didn't do right, I murmured now. He did well. There's a difference. Leela watched me carefully. She asked, "What do you want?" The question sat between us like a third person. For a long time, I didn't know how to answer it. Wanting things for myself hadn't been my habit. I knew what Tanya wanted, what Marcus wanted, what Gerald wanted, but what did I want besides a little peace and for my knees to hurt less when it rained? I want to not be at their mercy, I said finally. I want to know they can't just take my house and lock me up somewhere because I'm inconvenient. I want Maya to know her grandmother isn't a charity case. And I took a breath. I want him to have to look me in the eye and admit he built his name on my back, on Leonard's. Leela nodded slowly. That's a start, she said. We don't have to swing a wrecking ball through his whole empire, but we can make sure you're safe and that he feels some pressure to treat you with respect. How? I asked. First, she said, we gather more information. Recent filings, dividend statements, any communications you've gotten, if any.
We check the state business registry. We see how the company is structured now. If your name is still on those records the way I think it is, we'll have options. What about the paper Tanya wants me to sign? I asked, glancing at the manila envelope. She pushed it back toward me with one finger, like it was something rotten. You don't sign a thing. Not a napkin, not a birthday card. Nothing legal, nothing financial. You tell them your lawyer is reviewing it. Because that's true now. I'm your lawyer. My eyes stung. Do I have to pay you up front? I don't. She waved her hand. We can work that out later. For now, this isn't about a fat retainer. This is about an old friend being taken advantage of. I'll send them a letter putting them on notice that you're represented. That should slow their roll. I laughed, a shaky little sound. You always did like to fight, I said. She leaned back, smiling. I like to win, she corrected. There's a difference. When I left her office, the sun felt too bright. I stood on the sidewalk for a minute, holding the file folder she'd given me. It was heavier than it looked. Cars passed, someone walked by with the dog. Life went on like normal all around me. But inside, something fundamental had shifted. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't just somebody's mother, somebody's burden, somebody's useless old woman. I was a woman whose name was on the deed. I didn't march into the house and start shouting after that. I went home, put the papers back in the metal box with a little more care, and made myself a cup of tea. Some revolutions are loud. Mine had to start quiet. Over the next few weeks, Leela and I met 2 more times. Once to go over the state business registry. She printed out the entries with my name still listed as majority shareholder on the original entity. Once to sign a few letters. One to Gerald, notifying him I was represented. One to his company, requesting records. One to the bank, asking for account histories tied to that old loan. Leela helped me open a new bank account and just my name at a different branch than the one Tanya monitored. We sat in chairs that smelled of stale perfume, while a young man with a name tag walked me through the forms. His smile was polite but distant. He said ma'am a lot.
How much would you like to deposit today? He asked. Just this, for now, I said, sliding a small roll of bills across. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and no one else knew it was there. At home, I started playing a role I hadn't wanted to play. The harmless old lady who needed help with everything. I asked Tanya to help me install a grocery app on my phone. I just can't get this to work, I said, squinting. She loved that. She spent 20 minutes sighing at my slow fingers, swiping and tapping, showing off how much she knew. See, she said, triumphant, you just added to your cart, Mom, like that. Lord have mercy, I'd be lost without you, I said, putting on the sweetest voice I could manage. She preened. That's why we're here. All the while, I watched. I watched what mail came in with the company name on it. I noticed which weekends Gerald and Marcus whispered in the backyard by the grill. I noticed when Tanya came home with shopping bags sharper than our bank balance should have allowed. In my room, I started a small spiral notebook. The cover had flowers on it. Tanya would have called it cute. Inside, I dated every entry. I wrote down every insult, every suggestion about facilities, every time my cash seemed lighter than before. To anyone who glanced at it, it looked like a blood pressure log or an ache diary. To me, it was a record, a history. Nurses know the value of good charting. If it wasn't written down, it didn't happen. I had learned that early. Now I turned that training on my own life. One Saturday, I took Maya to the park. It was late afternoon, the air soft and warm. Kids squealed on the swings. Someone's dog barked at a squirrel. The smell of cut grass and grilled hot dogs from a nearby picnic drifted over. Maya sat next to me on the bench, shoes swinging a few inches above the ground. She was quiet for a long time, tracing circles in the dust with the toe of her shoe. "Grandma?" she said finally. "Yes, baby." "Why is Mommy mad at you?" The question hit me harder than any Tanya's comments. I took a breath. "What makes you think she's mad?" I asked gently.
She makes this face when you talk, Maya said, scrunching her nose to show me. And she says you make things hard. And she says you're going away soon, to a place with other grandmas. Do you have to go away? She looked up at me, big eyes shining. I felt something crack in my chest. I smoothed her hair back from her face. I said, "Your mommy is scared." "Of you?" she asked, surprised. "Not of me," I smiled sadly. "Of time, of money, of feeling like she has to carry everything. Sometimes when grown-ups are scared, they forget how to talk kindly. They say things that hurt. But you don't," she said. "You don't say mean things when you're scared." "I used to," I admitted. "When your daddy was little, when I was tired and we had no groceries and the lights were flickering, I said some things I wish I could take back. We learn, if we're lucky." She leaned her head against my arm. "I don't want you to go away," she whispered. "Who will make me pancakes with the crispy edges?" I laughed, tears stinging my eyes. I said, "Nobody makes pancakes like me. Listen to me, Maya. No matter where I live, you will always have a place with me, okay? Even if it's a tiny apartment with one chair and one spoon, we'll share it. You understand?" She nodded solemnly. "Can I bring my crayons?" "You can bring your crayons, your stuffed bunny, and every question you ever have. Grandma will still be Grandma." As she ran off to join the other kids, I sat there and let the doubt wash over me. It came in waves at night, but in that moment it rose in daylight. Maybe Tanya was right. Maybe I was clinging. Maybe it would be easier to sign the paper, let them take over, let someone else do the worrying. I was tired. My knees ached, my back hurt when I stood too long at the stove. The idea of a little room where someone else cooked, where I didn't have to hear sighs when I left a dish in the sink, had its seduction. But then I pictured Leonard, standing behind the cafe counter, wiping his hands on a towel, looking at me with that mischievous glint. "Evie, you never were a quitter. Don't start now." In my mind, he leaned over, kissed my forehead, and added, "Especially when someone's counting on you." Maya, swinging upside down from the monkey bars, laughed so hard she snorted. That was my answer. When I met with Lila again the next week, she had a small recorder on her desk. "I'd like to record some of what you tell me, with your permission, just so I don't miss details. Is that okay?" "As long as you make me sound wise," I joked. "You do that all by yourself," she said, pressing the little red button. We went over my notes, dates, statements, the comments I'd overheard. She listened without interrupting, only occasionally asking for clarification. When I finished, my throat felt dry, but my shoulders felt lighter. "You've been putting up with a lot," she said. "I've been surviving, same as always. We're going to do more than survive. We're going to plan."
We rehearsed what I might say in different scenarios. If Tanya cornered me about the documents again. If Gerald dropped by to smooth things over. If Marcus came to me pleading. "I don't want you to sound aggressive," she said. "That'll just feed their narrative that you're confused and difficult. I want you to sound steady, clear, like the nurse you were. State the facts. Repeat the phrase, 'My lawyer is handling that,' as often as you need." It felt strange to practice sentences about my own life, like lines in a play, but also felt good, in a way, like I wasn't going to be caught flat-footed again. The first near disaster came sooner than I expected. I was in my room one afternoon, sitting at my desk with my notebook open. I had just finished writing down an interaction from the night before, Tanya complaining that my cheap shampoo made the bathroom smell like a nursing home, when my door flew open. "Mom, have you seen the stapler?" Tanya called, already halfway into the room. I jumped, instinctively flipping the notebook closed. She stepped closer, I scanning my desk. "There," she said, snatching up the stapler. Her eyes dropped to the notebook. "What's that?" she asked, nose wrinkling. I exhaled slowly.
My doctor told me to keep track. I lied smoothly. You know, blood pressure, headaches. Helps her see if my medication needs adjusting. Tanya's expression softened into that patronizing concern she liked to wear. Well, that's good, I guess, as long as you're not Googling things. Dr. Google is not your friend. She snapped the book closed and handed it back. Put this somewhere Maya can't find it. She doesn't need to see all your issues. When she left, my legs felt weak with relief. I sat down and laughed quietly at myself. 50 years of nursing hadn't prepared me for hiding my own notes from my own daughter-in-law. The second close call was less funny. I was on the phone with Lila one evening, sitting on the edge of my bed. We were going over the timeline she'd drawn up for possible actions. I had her on speaker so I could fold laundry while we talked. So, if he ignores the first letter, we'll send a second by certified mail. If he ignores that, we start the formal audit process. In the meantime, do not. The door opened without a knock. Marcus stood there holding an empty coffee mug. Mom, have you seen the... He stopped when he saw the phone on my bed. Lila's voice echoed faintly. Sign anything. You hear me? Nothing. Not a thing. They can wait. I stabbed at the speaker button. I'll call you back, I said quickly, hanging up. Who was that? He asked. You've been having a lot of phone calls lately. I picked up the mug from my nightstand and stood, trying to keep my voice even. That was just Lila from church. We're organizing donations for the food pantry. You know how she gets. Likes everything in writing. He studied my face. Are you sure? He asked. You're not getting taken advantage of by someone, are you? There are scammers who target old ladies through church stuff. My heart twisted. Even in his suspicion, there was a thread of concern. He was still my boy, under all that fear and arrogance. I appreciate you worrying, I said, but I've handled myself for a long time, longer than you've been alive. I'm okay. He hesitated. Then he sighed. Okay, he said, just if anyone asks you to sign anything, show it to me and Tanya first. We'll check it out. I smiled tightly. I'll show it to someone, all right, I said under my breath after he left. Late at night, when the house was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of settling beams, I sat at my desk sorting my papers. Birth certificate, marriage certificate, death certificate. The house deed with my name on it in ink that had barely faded. The contract with Gerald. The printouts from the state registry with my name next to words like shareholder and percent interest. I laid them out in neat piles. All those pieces of paper that had marked the big turning points in my life, and some that had nearly slipped past me without notice. When Lila called to say Gerald was planning an investor dinner, a big event to celebrate a new project and announce that he was formally bringing Marcus in as heir apparent, I knew that was where everything would converge. He's using your reputation as the foundation of this new deal, she said. Even if they don't know it, he's standing on you while he introduces the next generation. And if you want to send a message, that's the room to do it. I pictured the room before I even saw it. White tablecloths, projector, glassware, the same little performances as the restaurant, but dressed up even bigger. I want Tanya there, I said. I want her to hear it, all of it, in front of people she respects. I figured you might, Lila said. I could hear the smile in her voice. How do you feel about a little theater? I've been performing for them for years. Might as well pick a better script.
We decided she would attend as my friend from church and revealed her role when the time was right. We arranged for a banker Leela knew to be nearby, on call, in case certain confirmations needed to be made. She prepared a slim folder for me with the key pages highlighted and a larger blown-up copy of the original contract mounted on board, like a school project. The night before the dinner, I ironed my best dress, the same blue one I'd worn to the funeral and to the restaurant. I smoothed the wrinkles carefully on the little ironing board in my room. The steam rose in little clouds. My hands shook only a little. On my nightstand, Leonard's old watch lay next to my Bible. I picked it up, turned it over in my fingers. The leather band was cracked in places, but the face still worked. He'd worn it every day for years, checking the time between flipping pancakes and changing the oil on someone's old truck. I fastened it on my wrist. It felt like armor. Then I took my simple gold cross from its hook and clasped it around my neck. When I needed courage, I wore that cross. Not because I thought it would magically fix everything, but because it reminded me of all the women before me who had survived worse with less. I looked at myself in the mirror, an old black woman in a blue dress, her hair silvering at the edges, lines around her eyes, not glamorous, not powerful looking, but behind her on the bed, a folder set full of proof that she was not what people thought she was. They wanted me small in this house, I told my reflection. Tomorrow, they're going to see how big my signature really is. The event was at a hotel I'd only ever seen from the freeway. Tall glass, little flags out front. The carpet was thick under my feet as we walked through the lobby. Tanya's heels clicked with confidence. Marcus walked beside her in a new suit. Gerald met us by the entrance to the private room, already in full host mode. "Evie," he boomed, kissing the air near my cheek. "Glad you could make it. This is a big night for our family." He didn't know how big. Inside, the room was exactly as I'd pictured. Long tables with white cloths, crystal glasses set in neat rows, a projector screen pulled down at one end showing the company logo, name cards at each setting. "Mom, you're down here," Tanya said, guiding me toward the far end, near the swinging door where servers would come and go, "so you can hear better." So I could be out of the way, she meant. I took my seat without arguing. It fit my plan. I wanted to watch. Lila arrived a few minutes later, wearing a simple dress and a cardigan. She gave me a quick hug. "You look like you mean business," she whispered. "I look like someone's grandmother, which is close enough," I murmured back. She took a seat beside me, introduced as my friend from church. Tanya glanced at her and then dismissed her. Perfect. Early on, Tanya floated around like a queen bee. She fussed over seating charts, adjusted place cards, snapped her fingers at a server about the angle of the centerpieces. Every move she made said, "Look how important I am here." When one of Gerald's associates asked me politely what I liked to drink, I said, "Just water, please." Tanya rolled her eyes. "Mom, live a little," she said, clinking her wine glass against Gerald's. "This is a big night." I smiled. "Oh, I intend to," I said. Dinner started with a salad course. Small talk floated around like balloons. People laughed at Gerald's jokes. He had a way of bending the room toward him when he spoke. I watched him like I'd watched patients who thought they were fine when their vitals said otherwise. At some point, the conversation at our end turned toward Marcus's new role. "So, what exactly will you be doing as vice president?" I asked, genuinely curious. Marcus started to answer, but Tanya cut in, loud enough for the whole table to hear. "Mom still doesn't understand how any of this works," she laughed. "Don't worry about it. Dad and Marcus take care of the real money. She thinks investors are just guys with checkbooks." A couple of people chuckled, more out of habit than anything. My face warmed. Lila's jaw tightened beside me. I could have reacted then, but I had already decided when I would speak. Not during salad, not during chit-chat. I waited. After dinner plates were cleared and dessert cups set down, Gerald stood and cleared his throat.
The room quieted. The projector clicked on, displaying a slide with the company logo and photos of completed developments. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "Tonight is more than just another project. It's about legacy. It's about the story of how a man can start with nothing and build something lasting for his family." I almost laughed out loud right there. He clicked through slides of old warehouses, then gleaming new buildings. His voice swelled when he talked about risk, about courage, about being self-made. Every few sentences, he tossed in a joke, and the room rewarded him with polite laughter. He gestured toward Marcus. "This is my son-in-law, a smart young man who's been learning the ropes. I'm proud to announce that as we enter this next phase, he'll be stepping up as vice president, the next generation of Reynolds development." Hands clapped. Tanya dabbed at the corner of her eye with a napkin, squeezing Marcus's hand. He looked flushed and proud.
And of course, Gerald continued, this is made possible because we have strong investors who believe in our vision. People who recognize a winner when they see one. The words settled over me like a dare. Leela leaned toward me. "Whenever you're ready," she murmured. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. My mouth went dry. I took a sip of water, set the glass down carefully, and pushed my chair back. "Gerald," I said, my voice carrying farther than I expected in the quiet room, "before you go any further, I have a few questions as one of your investors." You could have heard a fork drop. Every face turned toward me. Tanya blinked, then let out a small, incredulous laugh. "Mom, sit down," she hissed. "You're embarrassing yourself." I stayed standing. My knees trembled, but the rest of me held steady. Leela rose slowly beside me and placed a hand on my elbow, not to pull me down, but to ground me. I reached into my bag and pulled out the slim folder Leela had prepared. My fingers didn't shake this time. "I won't take long," I said, "but since you're talking about investors, it seems only right to mention the original one." Gerald forced a laugh. "Evie, this isn't really the time for..." According to the State Business Registry and the original incorporation contract for Reynolds Construction, I'm listed as the primary shareholder of the original entity, the one all of this grew from. A murmur rippled through the room. "What?" someone whispered. Tanya's face twisted. "What are you talking about?" she snapped. "Dad built this company from nothing." "From nothing?" I repeated. I opened the folder and pulled out a page, holding it up. Funny, because this piece of paper doesn't look like nothing to me. Leela stepped forward then, her voice calm and level. "For those who don't know me, my name is Leela Johnson. I'm Mrs. Carter's attorney." "Attorney? Since when?" Tanya sputtered. "Since she retained me, which is her right. Just as it was Mr. Reynolds' right to retain counsel when he drew up this," she tapped the contract, "many years ago." Gerald's color had faded. He took a step forward, palms out. "Now, let's not make a scene. There's been a misunderstanding. That paperwork is old. It was a temporary arrangement. We fixed it years ago." "Did you?" Leela asked pleasantly. "Because when we requested amended filings from the state, they still show Evelyn Carter as the majority shareholder of Reynolds Construction's original corporate entity. If changes were made, they were not recorded properly. That's a compliance issue." She nodded to someone near the back. The banker Leela had arranged stepped forward, adjusting his tie. "I'm Mark Daniels from First National," he said. "I can confirm that the original loan used to finance Reynolds Construction was secured using Mrs. Carter's income and property as collateral. Additionally, our records show no formal change removing her from equity after the loan was repaid. The accounts tied to that original entity are subject to review if a primary shareholder raises concerns." The room buzzed. Someone's chair scraped back. I watched Tanya's mouth open and close without sound. For once, she had no words.
I laid the original contract on the table nearest to me, smoothing it out so everyone who wanted to could see. Leela unfolded a larger, mounted copy and propped it on an easel a staff member brought over. There, in black and white, were our signatures. Mine, Leonard's, Gerald's, and the percentages circled in red. I served this man coffee every day in my cafe. My husband and I listened to his dreams. We believed in him. When the bank didn't trust him, they trusted my nurse's salary and our little restaurant. We put our house on the line so he could start this company. We agreed to an arrangement that would protect us, and we trusted him to do right by us. I looked at Gerald. You got your interest. He took care of you. For a while, I agreed. Then Leonard died, and the payments stopped. The updates stopped. The calls became fewer. And when your empire was big enough that you didn't need our credit anymore, our names slipped your mind. Convenient, isn't it? Mom, stop, Marcus said. His voice shook. This isn't the place. This is exactly the place, because you all chose to disrespect me in front of other people. You called me useless at tables like this. You made plans for my life without asking me, using money I helped create while telling me I don't understand money. I turned back to the room. I might be old, my knees might ache, I might need my glasses to read, but I know what it looks like when someone builds a house on someone else's foundation and then pretends they laid every brick. And I know what it feels like to be told you're just in the way. Silence. Then I took a breath and spoke the words Leela and I had practiced. As of this morning, with my attorney's help, I have formally requested an audit of Reynolds Construction's finances as they relate to the original corporate entity on this contract. I have also notified the bank of potential non-compliance with the terms. That means certain accounts may be paused or frozen pending review. A collective inhale swept the room.
We rehearsed what I might say in different scenarios. If Tanya cornered me about the documents again, if Gerald dropped by to smooth things over, if Marcus came to me pleading. I don't want you to sound aggressive, she said. That'll just feed their narrative that you're confused and difficult. I want you to sound steady, clear, like the nurse you were. State the facts, repeat the phrase, "My lawyer is handling that," as often as you need. It felt strange to practice sentences about my own life like lines in a play, but it also felt good in a way, like I wasn't going to be caught flat-footed again. The first near disaster came sooner than I expected. I was in my room one afternoon, sitting at my desk with my notebook open. I just finished writing down an interaction from the night before, Tanya complaining that my cheap shampoo made the bathroom smell like a nursing home, when my door flew open. "Mom, have you seen the stapler?" Tanya called, already halfway into the room. I jumped, instinctively flipping the notebook closed. She stepped closer, eyes scanning my desk. "There," she said, snatching up the stapler. Her eyes dropped to the notebook. "What's that?" "Just my notes," I said. My heart was thumping. I put a hand casually on the cover. She reached for it and flipped it open before I could stop her. The page she landed on, by some small miracle of mercy, was one where I'd scribbled blood pressure numbers and knee pain levels from a day when I had actually felt unwell. "Is this your symptom diary?" she asked, nose wrinkling. "You're tracking your aches and pains?" I exhaled slowly. "My doctor told me to keep track," I lied smoothly. "You know, blood pressure, headaches, helps her see if my medication needs adjusting." Tanya's expression softened into that patronizing concern she liked to wear. "Well, that's good, I guess, as long as you're not Googling things. Dr. Google is not your friend." She snapped the book closed and handed it back. "Put this somewhere Maya won't find it. She doesn't need to see all your issues." When she left, my legs felt weak with relief. I sat down and laughed at myself.
50 years of nursing hadn't prepared me for hiding my own notes from my own daughter-in-law. The second close call was less funny. I was on the phone with Leela one evening, sitting on the edge of my bed. We were going over the timeline she had drawn up for possible actions. I had her on speaker so I could fold laundry while we talked. So, if he ignores the first letter, she was saying, we'll send a second by certified mail. If he ignores that, we start the formal audit process. In the meantime, do not... The door opened without a knock. Gerald stood there, holding an empty coffee mug. Marcus stood there, holding an empty coffee mug. Mom, have you seen... He stopped when he saw the phone on my bed. Leela's voice echoed faintly. Sign anything, you hear me? Nothing, not a thing. They can wait. I stabbed at the speaker button. I'll call you back, I said quickly, hanging up. Marcus frowned. Who was that? He asked. You've been having a lot of phone calls lately. I picked up the mug from my nightstand and stood, trying to keep my voice even. That was just Leela from church, I said. We're organizing donations for the food pantry. You know how she gets, likes everything in writing. He studied my face. Are you sure? He asked. You're not getting taken advantage of by someone, are you? There are scammers who target old ladies through church stuff. My heart twisted. Even in his suspicion, there was a thread of concern. He was still my boy. Under all that fear and arrogance, I appreciate you worrying, I said, but I've handled myself for a long time, longer than you've been alive. I'm okay. He hesitated. Then he sighed. Okay, he said, just if anyone asks you to sign anything, show it to me and Tanya first. We'll check it out. I smiled tightly. I'll show it to someone, all right, I said under my breath after he left. Late at night, when the house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of settling beams, I sat at my desk, sorting my papers. Birth certificate, marriage certificate, death certificate, the house deed with my name on it in ink that barely faded, the contract with Gerald, the printouts from the state registry with my name next to words like shareholder and percent interest. I laid them out in neat piles, all those pieces of paper that had marked the big turning points in my life, and some that had nearly slipped past me without notice. When Leela called to say Gerald was planning an investor dinner, a big event to celebrate a new project, and announce that he was formally bringing Marcus in as heir apparent, I knew that was where everything would converge. She's using your reputation as the foundation of this new deal, she said. Even if they don't know it, he's standing on you while he introduces the next generation. If you want to send a message, that's the room to do it. I pictured the room before I even saw it. White tablecloths, projector, glassware. The same little performances as the restaurant, but dressed up even bigger. I want Tanya there, I said. I want her to hear it, all of it, in front of people she respects. I figured you might, Leela said. I could hear the smile in her voice. How do you feel about a little theater? I've been performing for them for years, I replied. Might as well pick a better script.
We found a small condo not too far away. Nothing fancy. Second floor, no elevator, but my knees could still handle one flight of stairs. Sunlight pooled on the living room floor in the mornings. The kitchen was tiny, but it was mine. Every spoon, every mug, every magnet on the fridge belonged to me. No one came behind me and rearranged things for my safety. I used some of my settlement to furnish it modestly. A good mattress for my back, a couch with firm cushions, a small table with 2 chairs. On one wall, I hung the old cafe sign we'd saved when we sold the building. Faded letters, but still proud. Carter's Corner. In a nook by the window, I set up a little workbench and arranged Leonard's tools. I didn't use them much, but it comforted me to see them in order, ready. His watch still circled my wrist most days. His picture sat on the dresser, next to the metal box that had started this whole thing. The first night I slept there, the silence felt strange. No muffled arguments through the ceiling, no footsteps overhead,
just the hum of my fridge and the distant sound of a neighbor's TV. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling both lighter and lonelier than I had in years. A few days later, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, Marcus stood there, alone, hands stuffed in his pockets. "Hey, Mom," he said. His voice was small. "Hey," I said, stepping aside. "Come in." He walked in, looking around. "It's nice," he said, sounding surprised. "It's enough," I replied. "Sit down." We sat at my little table. He didn't touch the cup of tea I poured. His eyes were red. He said, "I'm sorry," he said finally. The words came out in a rush. "I'm so sorry, Mom, for all of it, for not stopping her, for not seeing you, for letting Dad use you, for letting Tanya talk to you like that. I was just scared and tired and selfish," I added gently. "Don't leave that part out." He winced. "Yeah, I guess so." I studied his face. The boy I'd raised was still in there, under the man who'd gotten used to someone else carrying the weight. Apologies are the easy part. Anyone can say sorry, especially when the consequences show up. What matters is what you do when no one is watching, how you talk to your mother when you're not trying to fix something, how you protect your daughter from repeating your mistakes. He swallowed. "Do you hate me?" he whispered. I sighed. "I've hated some of the things you've done. I've hated how small you made me feel to keep your life big. But hate you?" I shook my head. "No, I don't have room in my heart for that. I've seen too much real hate in hospital rooms. This?" I gestured between us. "This is disappointment and grief. And maybe, if you're willing to work, the beginning of something honest." He nodded, tears spilling over. Can I still bring Maya?" "That's up to Tanya. But here are my rules. I'll see my granddaughter in spaces where I am respected. That means here, or at the park, or at church. Not in a house where I'm treated like furniture to be moved around. If your wife can't manage basic decency, she doesn't have to come." He flinched at that, but he didn't argue. "I'll talk to her," he said. "I hope you do, for your sake as much as mine." It took time, but eventually Tanya started sending Maya over on Saturday mornings. At first, she stayed in the car while Marcus walked the child to my door. Then one day, she walked her up herself, eyes hidden behind big sunglasses. She didn't come in. She just said, "We'll be back at 3," and turned on her heel. That was fine with me. I wasn't ready to share my table with her yet. Maya and I built new routines in my little condo. Saturday pancakes with crispy edges, coloring at the table while the morning light slanted in, sitting on my small balcony watching cars go by, counting red ones and blue ones. One morning, as she taped a new drawing to my fridge, a wobbly house with a big yellow sun over it, she said, "This is your house, Grandma, and that's you." She pointed to a stick figure with gray scribbles for hair and an enormous smile. I said, "What's that?" I pointed to a little rectangle under the house. She said, "That's the floor, so the house don't fall down." I watched her pat the drawing gently, smoothing the tape. My throat tightened. I said, "Always remember, baby, the people who built the foundation deserve a say in how the house stands. Okay?" She nodded like she understood, in the simple, serious way kids do when you tell them something true.
That afternoon, Marcus came to pick her up. He lingered at the door, looking at the drawing on the fridge, at the cafe sign on the wall, at the tools in the corner. "You look happy," he said. "I look free," I corrected. "There's a difference." He stepped forward and kissed my cheek. "Bye, Mom," he said. Not Ma, like he did when he was impatient. Mom, soft, respectful. As the door closed behind them, the apartment fell quiet again. I poured myself a cup of tea and took it out to the balcony. The chair creaked a little as I sat. The air smelled like someone's laundry detergent and a faint hint of car exhausts. I thought about all the women no one ever hears about.
The ones whose names aren't on signs. The ones who sign papers to help someone else and never see a thank you beyond a mumbled, couldn't have done it without you at a backyard barbecue. The ones who raise children, hold dying hands, mop floors, and get called useless the minute they stop producing income. Aging, I decided, wasn't the cruel part. People were. The way the world tries to shrink you into a corner. The way your own sacrifices get used as bricks to build a tower that other people stand on to look down at you. I didn't win a fairy tale. I still had awkward holidays ahead, navigating a son who was learning to stand up straight and a daughter-in-law who might never admit what she'd done. I still had meetings with accountants and doctors. I still had nights when I missed Leonard so much it felt like someone had taken a rib out of my chest. But there was peace, too. Peace in knowing I hadn't let them erase my life's work. Peace in seeing my name where it belonged. Peace in sitting at a table that was mine, with a cup that was mine, under a roof I'd chosen. The sun slipped lower, turning the buildings across the way gold for a moment. I took a sip of my tea. It was a little strong, just the way I liked it. If there's one thing I'd tell any woman listening to my story, it's this. Never let anyone call you useless while they're standing on the floor you paid for.